Welcome to the Alpha Podcast, episode 3. Today is the near ending of the college football season, and my voice is better, so I'm able to talk about it. So, in the first bit of news, a lot of the conference championships there's a couple of conference championships that have been decided. The first one, the American Conference, has their two teams that are going to be in the conference championship. Army and Tulane. Those two teams will be playing each other, I believe, in West Point, unless Army loses their next game to Notre Dame. And if Army loses that next game to Notre Dame, well, they need to lose to one more other team, and I don't know I don't know the last team on their conference thing. If they don't play another team, then it's going to be home field up in New York. But if they lose and Tulane's able to win out, they might be in Yulman Stadium. Looking through the other conferences, the Big 12 is between Colorado and I believe BYU. But there's still a couple teams that are right there that if Colorado or BYU loses, if Colorado loses, they're out of the playoffs, unless it's a team they've beaten before for the tiebreaker. Now to the Big 10, it looks like it's going to be Oregon and Indiana. However, Indiana plays Ohio State this weekend. And I don't know about you, and I don't know if you realize, but Ohio State's the number 3 team in that conference. So if they beat Indiana, they're automatically in, and they get the rematch against the Oregon Ducks. Oregon right now is probably a lock to be in that thing, and probably into the college football playoffs even with a loss. Then you've got the Conference USA. And the two teams I've seen that are locked there, unless they don't do a bowl game, is Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky. Those two teams are the top teams in the division, so if they play each other for the conference championship, that's what's going to happen. Then you go to the independents, and obviously Notre Dame is still pretty good. UConn is 7-3. They can make a bowl game this year, which is the craziest thing to think about. But they can still sneak into the top 25 if they can pull it off. Then you've got the MAC, another small school one. But Bowling Green and I believe Ohio are still the top 2 teams in there. I just looked at it and I forgot. Go figure. But I know for a fact Bowling Green is one of the top teams in that conference. So if Bowling Green is able to win, it might make a case, but they still got to worry about Boise State getting in, Army getting in, Notre Dame probably being able to sneak in. Heck, you could even have probably one of the Sun Belt teams make it in, which I'll get to. But then we're dwindling now to the ACC. And SMU looks like they locked themselves up into the conference championship. The only 2 teams that are standing in each other's way to make it is Clemson and Miami. And I don't think they play each other this year. But Miami and Clemson are tied. I think it'll go down to best record, and if they're the same record, it'll go by a point. I think by a tiebreaker. I think the only way that any other team gets into there is if all 3 of them lose their last couple games. But all the teams I've seen have 3 losses in the conference. So the top 3 teams are basically flipping between it besides SMU. Now to the SEC. If they ended right now, Georgia is out of the conference championship. It would be Texas and Texas A&M, a rivalry that hasn't happened in a few years. They would get the rematch, and they would be able to play each other. Now, I don't know I know Texas lost to Georgia, so they'd have the tiebreaker if Texas loses again. But I don't know if they play each other. If they play each other, then it comes down to you win, and you're into the championship, but you got to play Georgia. But Texas needs to win more than Texas A&M, because if they lose, Georgia has that tiebreaker, and they'll be out of the thing and probably make the playoffs. Then the Mountain West, it's just Boise State. Colorado State's the other team, but there's nobody's going to stop Ashton Jeanty. He's the Heisman favorite. I don't give a crap what the other thing says. He's the best player in college football, and I'll even argue that he's better than Travis Hunter. As much as I like Travis Hunter, he can literally get himself locked up by a good secondary. BYU, if BYU be able to hold them and stop them, Travis Hunter doesn't deserve to win it. Ashton Jeanty's taken over games. Travis Hunter may have that too, but I think that just Jeanty's a better player. He's produced more with being the number one option. As for Colorado, you've got Shedeur Sanders, you got him, but mainly Shedeur. And with the Heisman being a quarterback-heavy award, you can throw in Dylan Gabriel, you could throw in Quinn Ewers, you could even throw in Will Howard, and there'd be better chances for them to win than Shedeur. Well, Travis Hunter. I think that Boise State's running back will either win the Heisman or get snubbed from it because it's going to be won by a quarterback. And I might get annoyed about it, but I won't be mad because everybody that knows ball already knows that Ashton Jeanty's the best player in the nation, at least as a running back. All in total, I've looked at offensive linemen and I've looked at some of this stuff. He's not going to be up there yet. But then the Sun Belt, it's an interesting one. UL Lafayette or Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, whatever you call them. I call them UL Lafayette because, again, playing the older college football games, that's what they went by. They're locked into the championship. And I know they have a Sun Belt thing because I remember seeing it with Troy being in there last year. But Marshall is the other team. If UL Lafayette manages to win that conference championship, they might have a case to sneak into the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to upset anybody, but they might make the playoffs. I'm confident Boise's going to make it. Looking at the rest of the teams, Army might get in. Boise's going to definitely get in. You've got, obviously, the loser of the Big Ten championship. They're going to have maybe a minimum one, maybe two losses. They're still going to get in. You've got a couple SEC schools that are going to probably be locked in. You've got the ACC team that's going to be in. And you've got the Big 12 team. I think that at bare minimum, all of the teams that are going to be in are going to be either shockers or teams that have been consistent. This whole college season, though, has gone to fucking hell. And I don't mean to be rude about that. But shifting now to the NFL. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the worst team. I said it the minute that they drafted Trevor Lawrence, he was not going to do well. I hated him at Clemson. He was bailed out because he had weapons around him. He was bailed out by Travis Etienne Jr. He got bailed out by so many of his teammates. Now, in Jacksonville, he has struggled. He has not done well. And I wouldn't have been shocked if the Chargers didn't freaking blow the game last year and they would have won. I never liked Trevor Lawrence. I would have rather him taken Zach Wilson or Trey Lance. I just don't like him. And seeing how Justin Fields was doing, I'd rather have had them take him. Because he's better than Trevor Lawrence ever was. But then you've got the Titans. Now, you could make a compelling case of them getting rid of Will Levis. And quite frankly, he's been more of a fucking meme than anything. I think the best thing for him to do is just get traded. He still has the arm strength. He still has the mobility. He's a good quarterback. He's just... The team there in Tennessee is just ass. If they keep him, they're taking the offensive lineman out of LSU. 100%. They'd be stupid not to. Looking at the other ideas that the rest of the teams are, the Raiders look like a team that are in that boat. Now, as much as I like Gardner Minshew, he just ain't the quarterback. I was high on him when he was in Jacksonville. I hope they would give him another chance by taking somebody else besides Trevor Lawrence. But knowing what I know now, I would have been fine with just freaking trading for a quarterback or signing somebody. And speaking of which, there's a player, a little unknown player, that had one good season but has been out of the league. James Robinson, out of Illinois State. I don't know what it was about him, but he reminded me so much of kind of like Doug Martin. I watched him play. He was their only offense, but he still pushed forward. He still kept doing well. He had over 1,000 yards. But when they got Travis Etienne Jr., he basically died off. I bet you this one scenario, if they'd not taken Travis Etienne Jr. and they took up maybe an offensive lineman or a wide receiver, I wouldn't even be shocked if he would have been a better player. There have been really good undrafted guys that have broken in. Obviously, you had Philip Lindsay, you have Austin Eckler, you have David Johnson for a year. You have, honestly, the best one is Arian Foster. He was not signed to a team. He got signed by the Texans and did pretty well there for him. You can be an undrafted rookie as a running back and you'll do better than any other freaking player in that position. And then the Panthers, I have no clue what the fuck to pick with them. Like, looking at the top 5 projections, I will probably do my own mock draft within the next couple, probably after the NFL season's over, when the whole playoffs are over, when I have the top 32 picks and stuff all that lined up, I will have my list put up and taking a video of it of saying, this is what I think is going to happen, how this will go, and will everything go. Give me 1 second, gotta get some water. As I was saying, I will have my own mock draft up. And when I look at how I do my own mock draft, I don't just look at positions. I also look at the fact of, would they take this player at this certain spot? Because we've seen so many drafts before where it might seem like they're taking one thing, but they go completely off. Michael Penix, J.C. Latham last year was a prime example. Justin Fields in, I think the 2020 or 2021 draft, 2020 draft, he fell to the mid-teens. So it's I'm pretty confident saying that there's going to be a few shakeups. I think Ginty is probably going to be a first-round pick. I know Travis Hunter, I would even bet you money that he would be a top 3 pick. Because outside of maybe 2 quarterbacks, nobody else really stands out. The 2 I'm thinking of is obviously going to be Quinn Ewers and obviously Carson Beck. But I could also see, I'm pretty certain that you can just flip Ewers for Shedeur, and people wouldn't give 2 craps about it. But people says most of my takes are completely out there and I'm completely random and stuff like that. The takes I make, I actually have some thoughts behind them. And my best one that I have thought about, when I looked at Caleb Williams last year and looking how the way he's playing now, my perception of him is basically how I seen the same thing with Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. You had better quarterbacks on the board. You take the guy who's considered to be the best, and he's clearly struggled. And the Bears have no excuses. They brought in a new offensive coordinator. They brought in a bunch of weapons for the offense. The O-line is an issue, and it's been selling them. Nobody's been doing anything outside of DeAndre Swift, who's having a pretty solid year out in Chicago. But my top 5 quarterbacks that I had in there, I don't know if I mentioned it, but the first one I had went Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Michael Penix. I can't lower Caleb Williams down any further because I know he's better than Bo Nix. I know he's better than Michael Penix. Bo Nix, I love him. He's a fun player. He's a intense guy, and I like that about him. And I love Michael Penix's story, fighting through so many injuries, being gifted an opportunity at Washington, able to stay healthy, and carry the team to the national championship game. But when you have somebody who is as hyped up and as insanely smart as Caleb Williams was when he was especially playing at USC. It just showed how much different he was on that level. And people are probably wondering, why do I have Drake May higher? I look at Drake May in the same way I've looked at all the other quarterbacks I've ever seen. What I see is a big scrambler, decent arm. Well, actually, not a decent arm, a really good arm, and piss poor accuracy. I think he's probably at his ceiling, a poor man's version of Josh Allen. I think he's going to be a great quarterback. But the problems with him is that accuracy is going to bite him. And unless they have some magical renaissance with like bringing in a good guy, I do think Gerard Mayo is a decent move. I think you let him develop behind and let him learn behind Bill Belichick. He was a player for him. And I think he's going to have a better chance next year. Because that defense has been playing insanely smart and playing pretty good. If the Patriots are able to have a really solid season, I think they can go 9-8 or 8-9. I think that they just need to fix up a couple issues. They got a decent O-line, but they still need to bring in like maybe a couple guys. And I think they should use that first-round pick that they're going to get to take a wide receiver. In this draft class, I hope they take Emeka Egbuka. I'm praying. He is my favorite player in this draft. One of my favorite wide receivers in this draft class is if Isaiah Bond goes into this draft class too. People are gonna call him like Xavier, where they just feed him the ball quickly when he's got that speed and just freaking get out of here. But I think if the way I have May in my mind, I think it's going to happen. But Jaden Daniels, I've watched him. He played against Bryce Young, and he just carried that entire LSU team to beat them in Tiger Stadium. I think when I watched him play, he knew what he was doing, and I'm actually happy that they signed Brian Kelly. Because as much as Notre Dame was good, they just didn't bring in not enough firepower. Like, they don't have a difference maker. Like, they don't, the best ones I can explain, they don't have, like, a Travis Hunter. They don't have, like, an Ashton Jeanty. They don't have, like, Dylan Raiola. They don't bring in a lot of guys who are going to start right away. They bring in a lot of guys, let them sit, and just waste their potential. I think if they're smart, they let more of them start, and they just go from there. Going back to Daniels and why I had him higher than Williams. He's a better runner. He's a better arm. He's much more smart, and pairing him with an offensive mind like Cliff Kingsbury, you have yourself set up for a good combination. I think it was a bit of a risk bringing in Dan Quinn. But when you pair him with Cliff Kingsbury, who's a really good offensive-minded head coach, and he doesn't act retarded, you actually have a guy who can pretty much dominate. I think him and maybe even C.J. Stroud are going to be some of the brightest stars in college football, in the NFL. But shifting a little bit to more in a little more into the NFL, I also am pretty certain that a lot of teams are eliminated by the end of this week. I know the Jags will be eliminated. I'm certain the Titans will. The Raiders will as well. Panthers got a long freaking shot, but they could probably somehow pull this off because the Falcons are bad. The Saints are just piss poor. The Bucks, if Mike Godwin if Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are healthy, I'm like 80% certain that they'll be the favorites to win. I think Baker Mayfield in Tampa Bay is a perfect move. Paying him the money, he's been able to do well. And if both of his receivers weren't dead, he'd be in a better spot to be MVP. But that's all I have pretty much for today. I have a question of the day for you all. right now, looking at the college football playoff bracket, if it ended today, who is your top 2 teams to make it to the national championship game? For me, I'm thinking it's going to be Oregon and Texas. I trust Texas a little more. They've got the offense to do it. They got the defense to hold them down long enough. And Oregon's obviously, the whole reason why I picked him is because of Dillon Gabriel. He is the reason. Well, I've always been able to pick decent reasons because I've been pretty solid with a lot of my guesses. And I did pretty well last year picking Blake Corum for the reason why I'm picking Michigan to win it. He led them to the national title. So nothing's telling me otherwise to not go with the same strategies if it happened and picking Dillon Gabriel. But that's all I got for you. And the random player of the day, there was a player from Tulane, again, that I happened to look at. And he's actually a really solid player, but that's not who I'm picking. There was the quarterback a few weeks ago on UAB that I believe blew out a team. Something Kinta had 6 touchdowns against, I believe it was Rice or UTSA. But they killed them and they murdered them and they basically took them out back in Old Yeller. I remembered watching that and I was so happy. Because UAB is another one of my favorite colleges because I rebuilt them and Tulane so much. And maybe down the road when I get my own place and I get a camera and stuff set up, I can start recording even some college football rebuilds because there's some teams that I really want to get my hands on and rebuilding them. And I'll even ask, let me throw this as a part of the thing too. Leave yourself in the comments of what team I should try to rebuild when I get the new game. It can be an FBS or an FCS team because I'm going to go on the team builder sometime and actually make my own team because there's been a team I've been wanting to make for a long, long time. But that's all I got for you. Thank you all for watching. Like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.